Hey guys, and welcome to another GINX preview. Today we're going to be looking at Bethesda's Redfall, and we had a little preview of it, and James has checked it out. James, what's your initial thoughts?
Hi. I actually came away from it quite enjoying it, probably more than I originally thought I was going into the kind of preview. So I got to give you some kind of context of what I got to play and what I got to see. So I got about 90 minutes with the game, and it started off, I think, from memory, kind of about 7 hours in. So by that point, some of the town has been kind of seen by the players. You'll have leveled up a little bit. You'll kind of have some of your more powerful weapons and like abilities. And although I imagine most people might end up playing this game in kind of like a multiplayer kind of format, you can play it single player, and I was playing in single player for the whole duration of my preview. Despite being in a room with lots of other people, I did not get to try any kind of multiplayer style part of the game. So it was just from kind of a single player perspective. But I really enjoyed my time with it. I think I can see it doing really well, and I do wonder how much different it might be when you get to play with other people, and like how much more maybe difficult the game becomes, or how it might alter your approach to certain areas in the game. But I think it was a really solid first impression, because I think from what I can remember anyway, I don't think many people have actually been able to get hands-on with it. So I think this might be the first opportunity they've given press to kind of see the game outside of kind of gameplay trailers, but it definitely gave a good impression.
Because obviously it's an open world game as well, so you've got that aspect. Was it quite easy to navigate around that? Because sometimes open worlds in that kind of situation can be quite daunting, can't they?
Yeah, so it's kind of a quasi-open world in the sense that it's not like Breath of the Wild where you can literally like go for miles. It's not like, oh, you see that mountain over there, yeah, you can go to that. I think there's sort of limited memory of what I remember them telling me about the plot, but I think you're kind of based on an island, and it's not like Great Britain kind of size island. It's like Gibraltar or something, much smaller. And yeah, the open world works just fine. It did feel at times a little sparse, but then you're never kind of more than maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds or a minute's distance from being able to find kind of new enemies to kind of interact with, or kind of new kind of buildings to kind of explore. So it's not, like I said, it's not Breath of the Wild type stuff.
Expansive. That's really expansive, isn't it? Different vibes.
Yeah, none of that.
None of that.
But yeah, it kind of works really well. And I'm trying to think of games by Arcane where they might have had kind of open worlds, because most of them from memory is kind of fairly linear. I guess you could say that Deathloop kind of gives you an ability to kind of go wherever you want, and you kind of choose your own path, but it is still quite set, whereas this does feel, at least from memory, kind of the first instance of Arcane really letting you kind of go anywhere, do anything you want to do in your own kind of time. It's kind of got, I don't know why, it kind of gave me kind of Far Cry vibes a little bit.
Me too. When I saw some videos and things like that of the gameplay, I was like, wow, yeah, this gives me such Far Cry vibes, especially with the map in general.
Yeah, it feels, and even just sort of playing it, it felt elements of Far Cry. Maybe not quite as like explosive in the same way that you kind of get with Far Cry games, or kind of like silly dogs with weapons attached to them or anything like that. There's none of that. The other kind of side that it kind of leans into is kind of the abilities that you get for your character that you choose to select. So there was kind of 4 characters that you could choose from. Apologies to Bethesda because I cannot remember their names, but each character kind of has their own different abilities, and I chose the one that can kind of summon a lift.
That's cool.
And it will kind of like give you like an instant kind of jumping boost kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you can also, I don't know if they gave us the explanation for why you could do this, but you could effectively summon her like himbo vampire ex-boyfriend that comes in and then helps you.
Amazing.
No context, was just kind of given it. And then all the other kind of characters have got their own kind of different things. So there's one character who I think kind of uses like this little robot thing that follows you around to help, and there's another character that I think was kind of very good with kind of sniper rifles, so you can imagine what their kind of tool set is like. Again, only got the chance to kind of experience one of the characters, but I think that will probably be another kind of side to the game that might be interesting, that you could approach the game in different ways depending on which character you choose to play it with. So that might afford players a little bit of replayability, or even just if you are teaming up with friends, kind of different ways and means that you can approach the game. But again, it's kind of that thing of a kind of Far Cry open world and all the guns that you kind of get with that, mixed with kind of the maybe cool Dishonored style abilities that you might know and love from kind of arcane games. So a nice mix.
Nice mix. I think that's it. But like you were saying with the co-op stuff, I mean, like, I suppose with that, the more you have, the more different powers, and everyone's kind of got their own approach. So in a way, co-op's probably the best way to play it, because you've got all these abilities coming from different characters all together.
Yeah, and I imagine when you do play with other people, I imagine that the world itself will probably level up around you, maybe enemies and the vampires that you face. I'm using the word vampires. I'm not sure if that's how they refer to themselves. It might be like one of those instances where it's like The Last of Us, where it's like they're not really zombies, but they are zombies.
They definitely suck your blood, though, from what I've seen. So
for all intensive purposes, the vampires in this game. And then there's kind of a militia that work with them. So it's not just you against just vampires. It's like vampires plus this militia that they've sort of recruited at some point during this hostile takeover of this world. And I imagine that if you were to play with other people, that kind of levels up everything. So there'll probably be more of these enemies. They'll be probably harder to beat. Because I got by just fine playing on my own. So I would hope that if I'm working in a group of 4, that it's significantly harder. So I'm hoping that kind of level, that difficulty scales up as you play with more people. But I think from just like a single player perspective, I really enjoyed it. Like, I think there's not much, I guess, in terms of storytelling, at least from what I experienced. There's probably a lot there under the surface that you can kind of find by, I don't know, maybe there's like little notes and stuff, but it felt, in terms of the storytelling side, a bit sparse.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which again, maybe that's another reason why it kind of reminded me of Far Cry.
There's so many strands in Far Cry, isn't there? You just get so lost.
Here's a gun, just go.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm sure that there is definitely kind of an underlying storyline that kind of runs through the whole game. So again, I'm trying to remember from my preview, because it was kind of a week or two ago, but basically it seems like some people, that like big bad umbrella style company, was doing some sort of research. They created vampires, and now they're like, well, we're going to rule the world now. And then there's an army that kind of comes in but doesn't really do much, it seems, and you're one of 4 people who are kind of trying to fight back and free the rest of the island piece by piece. And within the island, you have kind of different types of vampire things, and you've also got this sort of militia they've recruited. And then there's kind of these boss-style enemies, which are called gods, who there seems to be kind of more storytelling around. So there was one in the demo I played where I think it was called something like the Butterfly Man. I'm trying to remember because I've not got my notes in front of me. And it basically meant that you went up to where this mansion was, and then it kind of told you a little bit about this character and their kind of central involvement. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of storytelling going on. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem for anyone, but if you're not so fussed with that, and it's more that you like the kind of vibe that you've seen from the trailers, and you like what Arcane traditionally do with their kind of superpower / shooter games that they've previously done, be it Prey or Dishonored or Deathloop, then you'll certainly enjoy it. It's definitely that same wheelhouse. I just don't think people should be expecting anything kind of more than that. You're not going to get like this really incredible hit of storytelling, but I don't think it needs to be either.
No, I mean, does it make you want to play regardless of that? Like, do you think, yes, I want to continue that, see where it goes?
I definitely want to play this from start to finish. I just don't think it's going to be the kind of thing where afterwards, I don't think you're going to be going like, oh, there's this incredible new game that I'm playing. Like the thing that taking it a couple of months back, I guess. I recall from memory everyone saying like, oh yeah, God of War Ragnarok, yeah, the gameplay's it's kind of the same. Yeah, it's still good, but it's kind of the same. But then everyone would always caveat it with, oh, but the story and the actual story that you get to experience is incredible. It's like blockbuster movie style story, and it's like this feels like the reverse. It feels like you'll really enjoy your time playing the game and playing Redfall, and you'll like all the kind of mechanics that they've brought into it, but I don't think you're going to walk away from this thinking like that was an amazing story.
Yeah, it blew my mind.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the only gripe I kind of had with it, at least from my kind of limited time. It might be that as I play more of it when it eventually comes out, which I think's May, that I will enjoy the story more. But from what I did see, there wasn't anything there that really kind of blew me away or kind of grabbed me by the neck and was like,
you were like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I think that's it though. I think sometimes games are more about the mechanics of the actual gameplay itself rather than the story that surrounds it, isn't it, sometimes? So
and like I said, those kind of gameplay mechanics and are kind of exactly what you'd expect of an Arcane game, and they are it's just really solid now. Like, you know exactly what you're going to get from it.
Yeah.
And it delivers it in spades. It just puts it into a slightly different world, like it was, which is just more opened up. I think the only bad thing I'd say about the open world is that, like I said, it felt a bit sparse going from one area to another, and also, which I wasn't quite expecting this, and I don't know if I just didn't notice it in any of the kind of info they'd provided previously, but there is like a day and night cycle, and
cool.
In the day part, like there's just no vampires anywhere, but the militia are still kind of peppered around.
Interesting.
And that felt a bit weird because it's like, I think I went into, I'll explain what I was doing before, but I went into like this sort of dungeon thing, and then when I came out, it was like, oh, it's day. And up until that point, for a good kind of solid 35 minutes, it was all at night. And when I came out and everything was day, I was like, oh, where is everything?
Everything's changed.
And then I kind of went round a corner or two and was like, oh, the militia's still here. And it was like, I guess I'll just kill them and move on then. I'll grab the ammo. And then I kind of looked around and was like, where am I going? Because it's day. It's like, and then it was like, oh, there's some more militia over there. I guess I'll go that way. And then, so it is a little bit strange in that sense. And I'm not sure how that might translate to the full game. Like, if it's going to feel that kind of sparse when you're playing in the daytime because you're not being kind of hunted by vampires at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was playing it before that and it was nighttime, there was like a point where I kind of rounded a corner and then about 3 vampires came at me, and it was like properly like, right, I'm getting out of here, like run back the other way, shooting as I kind of run backwards. And that was really intense. But as soon as it kind of went to day, you lost that jeopardy. And then it was almost like I was just like, well, I'm going to take that militia out. I'm going to take that militia out. And it was fine. There was, I can't remember the name of them, but there were like these little zones that you could also find dotted about the map, which kind of broke up the gameplay, which is what I went into. And the only way I could think to describe it is it felt a little bit like, apologies to anyone that doesn't play Destiny, it felt like the lost sectors in Destiny, which is like little like tucked away missions or like little areas that you can kind of go into. And in Redfall, you kind of go into what is effectively like some sort of dream world thing.
Cool.
And you go in and it's kind of littered with vampires, and then you can get lots of extra loot in there. And then you make your way out, and that's when I came out and it was suddenly daytime.
That's weird.
So it was like it was completely pitch black, went in, did this thing, walked out, and was like, oh, okay,
there we go.
Daytime. And then in terms of like the enemies, again, they were fairly varied. There was kind of, I encountered maybe 3 or 4 different types of vampire kind of creature things that kind of threw up different mechanics that you'd have to kind of get used to.
Yeah.
And I'm be interested to know exactly how many more there is, but it was all enjoyable. I think, like I said, it's just maybe those teething issues where Arcane have never really kind of done a full open world game. And it, like, to me, it just felt a little bit sparse going from A to B. And it'd be interesting to know whether or not how much that changes between now and when it finally comes out, and also how much that changes based on just how many people you're playing with.
Yeah.
It might be that when you're playing with more people, they're just everywhere, and you can't move for like running into some sort of vampire.
Yeah, they add the pressure right on. You're gonna have to though, I suppose, because otherwise it's gonna be way too easy, isn't it? If you don't have the added pressure on top of it with the co-op.
It felt playing single player, and I honestly, it gave you different difficulty levels, and I think I was on kind of the middle tier.
Yeah, it's always good to start off, isn't it?
Yeah,
middle to
yeah, exactly. I don't want to go for the completely...
No, it's too intense. It's always too intense. But what you're going for.
It felt reasonably easy to play single player. I think the only issue I ever encountered was like running out of ammo for one particular gun, but then you could instantly just open your inventory and it's like, right, well, I'll pick this one out instead.
Yeah, change it.
And even that, like the guns, fairly fine. There was kind of the usual kind of shotgun things and pistols and a few other ones, and then you always have to stake the vampires, which is quite interesting. So like you can
proper
it's going
proper lore of like,
I was going to say Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I guess that's showing my age.
Top tier.
But yeah, so like there was one weapon where it effectively kind of froze the vampires. It was like a UV kind of beam, and when you used it on them, it would almost like turn them to stone.
Oh, that's cool.
But then if you didn't like follow up and like finish them, they could just come back and get you. And same for some of the kind of guns. You could use them to your like as much as you want.
Stun them.
But yeah, it only ever stunned them. So unless you got up close and actually staked them, you'd just kind of end up wasting your ammo and then they come back at you. So there's kind of quite interesting mechanics around kind of fighting the vampires as well. But all in general, it was very, and I don't know if I've come across as dour.
No, not at all.
But I was genuinely kind of walked away from it thinking I'd really like to play this from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will have that same feeling, because I think that's generally how Arcane. I think everyone that's kind of played an Arcane game generally feels like, oh, this feels really good.
Yeah.
Want to finish it. I think it's just that thing of, I don't feel like 3 months on having finished it, I'm going to be looking back at it going, oh, that's amazing. Like that was truly groundbreaking.
Yeah,
I
some
loved
games
it.
stick with you, don't they? And
I think it'll be great fun in the moment, and I think it'll be another kind of great launch for kind of Xbox Game Pass. But outside of that, I do wonder like how much impact it will have long term. Yeah,
it's interesting because it is one of the anticipated games of the year for the exclusives, isn't it? So it's going to be interesting where it does actually sit and how popular it is when it does come.
Yeah, and I think it's, like I said, it'll do great on Game Pass. I think everyone, the day that it launches, I would like definitely, from what I've played so far, suggest people jump in and give it a try. It's that thing of, are people going to keep talking about it 3 months after that? And it'd be interesting to see whether or not they have kind of DLC content planned for that, or how they might expand on the game in kind of the months that follow, because it's not in the same, it's not, I guess you could say everyone was talking about Deathloop when Deathloop came out.
Yeah.
But however many months on, it's just a great game in a library of games that exists there, but it's not being talked about maybe in the same way that like a God of War gets talked about in terms of its storytelling or anything like that. So I do feel like this is just going to be another fantastic Arcane game, but it's not a like brilliant top 5 games of this console kind of
game of the year. Maybe not as a contender, but no, but that's a really nice insight, James. I think like we've got the vibes of that, so I think it should be good, and it's nice that you had an early play as well. It's always nice to have the cheeky little preview, so thank you Bethesda and Arcane for that. But make sure you like and subscribe if you like this content, because there'll be loads more on the way, and we've got lots going on this channel at the moment, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled. We'll see you next time.